Okay, so in this video we're going to be talking about adding labels to books. These are 300 years old. So these are the 4 volumes that we've been restoring, and I checked the title pages. This is volume 33, 34, 35 and 36 of the set. We're lucky that we have a label available, volume 36 and one for 35. We don't have a label ready to go for volumes 33 and 34, but by doing a little bit of work between these 3 labels here, we're going to be able to get there. And the labels themselves are going to need to be glued onto the book. But before we do any of that, it's first worth bearing in mind that bookbinders make these labels out of the leather scraps that are left over once you've used the main body of the leather to make the board and the spine. So it's typically the thinnest leather, the lowest quality leather, because it's literally from the periphery of the pelt of the animal. Labels are therefore very fragile, particularly labels this old. And the moment they come into contact with any kind of water-based moisture, such as a glue, you've only got a very limited amount of time before they start to perish and disintegrate. So the very first thing we do before doing any work with these labels is to try and improve their resilience, and we do that using leather consolidant. So I'm first going to treat all these labels with a good dollop of leather consolidant, and that'll put some polymer into the label and they'll become somewhat more resilient. I'm going to be quite generous with this. I can use the boards themselves as a base to work on. You know, they won't say no to a bit of leather consolidant as well. I'm actually working on the underside of the labels. And that's where the leather's roughest, and frankly I think it's where the take-up of the consolidant is going to be easiest. In this case I'm just using my finger to work it in. This bit is actually a label stuck onto a piece of spine leather, so it's actually a bit thicker. So for this one I'm actually going to apply it to both sides. There we go. Make sure. There we go. I can go there, I can go there to dry. Same here. Just work it in with your finger and just be always very careful. Hippocratic oath, do no harm. That was a big blob, so I'm actually going to make sure both labels get a good dose of that. All right. Okay, now I'm going to let those dry and then we'll continue. Okay, so I'm now going to glue this label 36 into place. The spine's also been treated with leather consolidant. The best way that I've found works for me in terms of locating this is to basically locate the glue in a shape that's similar to the shape you're gluing, but do it about 1/3 of an inch in from the edge of the shape. So in this case of this label, it's going to look like this. Yeah, that's about right. So that means that you may not get glue going all the way to the edge, but what you don't have is glue sort of coming out the outside and making the outside surface sticky and so on. Drop the label into place, like so, and then use a surface. I'm just using a folded kitchen napkin here what I'm going to do is just press it into place like that with one go. Even though it's treated with leather consolidant, you really only get a couple of goes with this, so you want to try and get it right first time, because any more than that and the label will really start to disintegrate. Okay, so there we go. 35 and 36 are now in place, so those two are going to be put to one corner to rest. And so we're now going to turn our attention to what we need to do for volumes 33 and 34. This is a little more intricate. I'm sure there are better methods of doing this that bookbinders will point to professionals. But here, as an amateur guy, this is what I've found kind of works. The basic rule is, if you're going to amend the numbering by sort of harvesting numbers from other labels, do so using a standard punch. That way you're always making exactly the same shape of hole. If you try and eyeball it and use a ruler and scissors, it's unfortunately it just doesn't end well, or at least it hasn't for me. So this punch is actually one that my daughter used. She gave it me for this purpose. It's actually in the shape of a heart, of all things, which actually is quite good, because what the first thing we're going to have to do is move the V from this here to the end where the second I is, in order to make this a label 34. And a V actually fits into a heart shape very, very nicely. So here we go. I will freely say this just takes a little bit of bravery. There's a reasonable chance I could actually just get this horribly wrong, and it'll all just end up. So first off, I'm gonna okay. So that number one is free. I'm now gonna remove the letter V from here, and the heart shape actually does work really well for this. Now I'm going to pause for a second and find my letter. Okay, so I found the letters that I punched out, so that was the result. You can see the hole there. So same as before, we're now going to first put the main label in place. You've got a bit of an excess of glue coming through the hole there, probably a little more than I'd like. Okay, same as before. Exert the pressure. And then the actual letter that I punched out is right here. So now let's see if I can very gently slide that into place. Oops. This is where it gets a bit dangerous, because once again, these labels really start to get very stroppy if so. I've had to compromise a little bit with the bordering of the gilt. I could, in theory, have a Kitsugi kit. I could, if you like, sort of do that a little bit further, but there we go. Volume 34. Okay, so this is going to be an exercise now in myopia. So as you can see, I've actually punched out 3 holes here in order to assemble the label for volume 33. So what I'm going to do is, very temporarily, I'm actually going to glue the labels onto this backing for reasons that will become clear in a moment. So I put this label on here, like so. And this is only using a tiny bit of glue, and as I say, it's very temporary. So this shape here came from the edge of what became label 34, and it had a bit of the border in, plus the letter I. So it's actually exactly what I need to go there. This is the letter X. So that'll be the third X here. So that'll go there. The problem I've got now is that I'm actually overlapping, so I can't drop the third shape in. So what I've done is glue everything in place, and hopefully this is still in shot. And what I'm now going to do, and this is really quite intricate, is I'm going to re-stamp this out to make a full heart shape. Like so. So hopefully I can lift this guy out carefully here. Of course I'm using glue, which means the label itself is starting to complain. But I've now got that shape, so what I'm going to do is peel this off gently and hope that my shapes stay in. One has not, and I've already got a bit of disintegration happening. So I'm going to have to be very careful with this. So let's get this label onto the book. Okay, here goes. So the label's in place. Got one of the heart shapes there. This is the middle one. That now has a hole it can go into. And now for the most delicate part of the whole show. We need to get this little guy right in there. And we're going to just take my time about this. You can see the numbers themselves are a little bit all over the place. Yeah. That of course is very common anyway with labels, even when they're not chopped up with hole punches. It's probably as good as we're gonna get it. General rule with this is the more you touch it, the worse it gets. So I'm going to just put some decent pressure on it and then leave it to dry.